Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, 1999 retro review, The Matrix. I can only show you the door. You're the one who has to walk through it. I'm Ariel.
And I'm Andy Bowman.
All right, and today we are going to do a review of the 1990 Wachowski's film, The Matrix. But before we do that, we have a special guest we want to introduce, and that is a streamer named Valerie. Valerie, say hi to the audience and give a little introduction as to your geeky interests and whatnot.
Hi everyone. I'm Valerie. I'm a streamer. I play like Tetris and Sudoku. I have a new like show that I'm planning on doing soon where I'm gonna look through like old IMDb like message boards soon because I'm really into movies. I like Blues Brothers a lot and like the Star Wars movies. I also friend of prequels every day. And yeah. I'm also involved in like the bug main stuff. If anyone's familiar with that.
Yeah, that's cool. Go ahead, Andy.
I'm familiar with the bug main stuff. It's very difficult to describe to people who aren't in on it.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. So if you are in on it, you can probably hit up Andy and Valerie in regards to that. Me, no, I've no idea what's going on. So, like we said, we're gonna hit up the Matrix. I'm excited to have you on, Valerie. There's plenty to talk about. IMDb message boards seems to be like a really fascinating place to look into.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's a lot of really interesting things to research in like pre-Facebook, pre-Reddit, pre-Twitter internet.
Oh,
Like
for
I
sure.
kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of wish like that was more like somebody like did that.
Hmm.
But this is not a traditional episode, so we don't have any news for you. If you're listening to this, you probably already know that The Matrix 4, a reboot slash sequel slash reload revolution,
Hmm.
is happening. Nobody's quite sure if it's a good idea or not, or people seem to be divided on whether or not it's a good idea. But we are just going to get straight into this review. I'm going to to I had to write it down. I'm going to try to give a synopsis for what happens in this movie to people who have not seen it and still want to listen for some strange reason, and then we will all take turns. I don't want to dominate the mic in talking about the film. Uh, so at, in the 21st century, the machines, like an AI, was developed, and the machines took over the planet. Humanity, due to their own stupidity, managed to kind of ruin the environment, much like we're doing without the threat of AI. And humanity has been dwindled down to a single city, and the machines have begun to harvest humans as a power source. We'll get into that later. Human consciousness that the machines are creating is trapped in a program called the Matrix that simulates real life. Humans who have been awoken from the Matrix can tap back in, log back in, apparently through dial-up, and bend the rules to do superhuman things. There's a prophecy that an individual called the One will come along to free humanity and end the war between machines and humans. A man named Morpheus and a woman named Trinity have tracked down a hacker known as Neo, who they believe is the One. The humans are betrayed by one of their own awoken humans, Cypher, and special agents of the Matrix, who are programs, AIs, have captured Morpheus. Neo and Trinity go back in, and Neo to rescue him. Neo realizes his true potential, and he becomes the One by the end of the film. So let's start with our guest, then we'll go to Andy, then we'll go to me. Valerie, what were your thoughts when you first saw this movie in 1999?
Well, I didn't see it at first in 1999. I got caught on a little bit later. When I was a kid, like watching like stuff in reruns on like TNT and stuff. I watched The Matrix a lot, that and like Speed and other Keanu movies, and this was like before the Wachowskis came out, and I just thought of it as like a really good action movie, like up there with like Speed, and like I really did like the Keanu movies. Like I thought they were really good, but that's basically all I thought of them. It's just like cable movies.
Okay, how about you, Andy?
Okay, so I was lucky enough to see this movie about 6 months before The Matrix Reloaded came out. My parents were a little bit, no, you can't watch our movies. So I was unable to see The Matrix until then, and then I went to go see Reloaded with my mom, which was an awkward experience. But
She wasn't a fan of the big orgy scene, and that's
yeah. Oh man, that was. Anyway, I thought this was an awesome action movie. You know, this was super sci-fi. I liked that. I liked thinking about what was going to come next. I just thought this was really cool. And plus, being a slightly edgy teenager, I appreciated the cyberpunk aesthetic.
okay. Yeah, I see that. For me, I watched this somewhere between 1999 and 2003. I'm not quite sure when. I probably didn't watch it in theaters like you, Valerie. I probably watched it on TV. A non-rated R cut. Uh, I love this movie because of the like kung fu wire work, and not necessarily because of any of the reasons why it became incredibly popular. If that tells you something about myself, and everybody knows that I grew up on um Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan VHS tapes. I literally, that's all I did. I had this big, 17 VHS box set of Jackie Chan movies, uh, and so this was me seeing um kung fu that I had watched in grainy VHS tapes, on the big screen, so to speak, and I really enjoyed that. I really like Keanu Reeves because by the time I was maybe 13, by the time Reloaded and Revolutions came out, everyone kind of knew that he was part Asian, and I'll take what I can get in that department. Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed the hand to hand kung fu stuff, and I never quite it wasn't until I was a teenager in late high school, early college, where I was like, oh, people really think this movie is a huge deal. Um, so that being said, it's 2019. 20 years have passed. What do we think now? So Valerie, what are your thoughts on The Matrix in 2019?
I on this rewatch, I loved it so much. Like every single thing about it, like the kung fu, the lever aesthetic, the fishnets, the club scenes, the lighting, everything of this movie just works perfectly for me. Like I loved every single moment of it. Like the Wachowskis are just so unique in their directing and just their whole auteur system of making films that it worked perfectly for me. I loved it.
All right, Andy.
Okay, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a bit slower than I remembered it being. I really remember the lobby scene first and foremost. The action, how crazy everything got, and I remember just how weird it is once Neo gets out of the Matrix. The after the scene with Morpheus, I just remember how bizarre and weird the change was. And watching it this time, it is a lot slower and more methodically paced than I seem to remember it being. I really, really enjoyed this rewatch. A lot of the lines are a little weird and fall flat, but thinking about how just intimidating and perfect Lawrence Fishburne is in the Morpheus role and how great Keanu is, yeah, this movie was a lot of fun. What did you think, Ariel?
Yeah, I think you have a really great point about Lawrence Fishburne and Keanu, and we'll get into to borrow a bit from the Rewatchables podcast that Bill Simmons does on the Ringer. We'll get into some casting what ifs in for Lawrence Fishburne's character Morpheus and Keanu Reeves' character Neo. Um, I just watched it today. I finished it today after years of not watching it. I don't think I've had to rent this on Apple or wherever, Amazon or Apple, whatever. I don't have a Blu-ray copy of it. I think I don't think I've watched the movie through since before, like since around Matrix Revolutions came out in 2004. I felt so burned by Reloaded and Revolutions that I just refused to watch this. On a rewatch today, I actually thought it's a really solid, and by solid I mean like it's a simple story with really complex minutia in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the simplicity of the narrative makes it really solid. Like it makes it really hold together well. And obviously, we know what happens when they try to open up that narrative. We got the sequels, which you know are fun to look at, but a mess narratively to be sure. Um, my biggest takeaway from a rewatch is that the kung fu scenes are better than I would have given them credit for, and the lobby scene I think now is actually kind of lame, and I've kind of misremembered that scene being way better than I think it actually is. But I think there's so much cool stuff in here that you know, Andy, we talked about this with the boys, where it's just like this would be groundbreaking, or this seems groundbreaking to like the general public, but if you had watched anything that had influenced the Wachowskis in making this, then it probably wasn't as groundbreaking as it like appears to be. But overall, I still think it's really good. It's really simple and solid, and I think this movie, to me, like this movie is just so, since it is so simple, it's so vastly different than anything the Wachowskis have done. It's so tight and like I don't know. You're right. The script is weird. Some of the little details they do before they pull Neo out are weird and maybe don't make sense. But I think this is a really good action movie.
Okay. Now, Ariel, I do want to point out that I think that lobby scene is a little choppy, you know, where they the cartwheels and everything, and I think part of that is just how many times they would have had to re-destroy an entire room.
Mm-hmm.
Uh yeah, it's super impressive to see all the bullets flying everywhere, but just thinking about all the marble and stonework they had to put back up every single time they had to shoot it again.
Yeah,
Uh,
I see.
that I think that makes it a little cheesy in as far as the editing goes. But yeah, I can see how the cartwheels and everything are a little off.
So I mean, this is hard because it's retrospect, right? But like in a rewatch, they pull out these like inaccurate, cheap looking submachine guns, and the cheap looking, that's just a shot because it's 1990. That's not their fault. But like
Yeah.
they pull out these submachine guns that like everybody knows, and the way they use them, they're like just super inaccurate. They just spray bullets. When like this is why I asked you off air. I was like, hey, were aimbots a thing in 1999? Because like it'd been really cool if like they just walked in like John Wick style, and everybody is shooting at them, and they just like, you know, they just like they just one tapped everybody. Like that's a cooler scene to me that shows that they're like, you know, they're out of the Matrix. A scene like, I don't know if you guys have seen Red with Bruce Willis. Uh, but he's a retired like CIA agent, and he does things like so perfectly and sharply and in one go that it's like, man, like nobody could really do this. Where there's a scene where like a car is drifting and he like perfectly steps out in motion. Like that's the kind of stuff like I actually think should have been like in retrospect for the Matrix, where it's like, man, if Neo and Trinity walked in with like pistols and they just like one shot, like took, you know, one clip and everybody's done, like that would have been more interesting to me than spraying and praying and doing awkward somersaults. I think a lot of the rest of the movie's great, but that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Valerie, do you have any comments about the action?
I did like in that scene, like yeah, I mostly agree with that about like how it would have been cooler with pistols, but I did like how Carrie Ann Moss's Trinity, her like kind of like when there's that one officer left and like she took him out. That was really good, and but also like that very first scene, I forgot about how like good that first scene was with Trinity just like escaping like Agent Smith, and like the truck and like how it went into the phone booth. I forgot about that whole scene, and that was just so good.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
I'm
Go ahead, Andy.
I've just took a look at the budget for this, 63 million, which is over 100 million less than Wild Wild West,
Hmm.
which we
In the
just
same year.
covered. Uh
Uh,
man, and if you stop and think, like, the Matrix Reloaded had 150, and I think that's where a lot of the action, because they built an entire highway for that one action scene in the Matrix Reloaded. Um,
yeah, they got out of hand.
Hmm.
but man, I'm just thinking about, like, one of the things that I really enjoyed was when Agent Smith does, like, the split. He's dodging all the bullets, and you can see how fast he's moving.
Hmm.
I thought that was a really great little bit of just showing you how how it's possible he's dodging all the bullets, and then you get to see it from Neo's point of view when they do the famous bullet time.
Yeah.
Yeah. In regards to bullet time, let's talk about things like that. A lot of people will say, for a good reason, that the Matrix is like super impactful, and I think bullet time is one of the things that they maybe harpen back to. How impactful do we think like the Matrix really was? I'm going to give a few movies here. I think if you look at X-Men and Underworld, I think the fashion choices in those movies that they made were 100% inspired by the Matrix. X-Men started filming in September of '99. I like double checked this, so they definitely had seen the Matrix, and then whether or not it influenced them, we'll never truly know. But you could probably make that argument that it did. Underworld came out in 2003, a few years later, and you can there's a lot of black leather in the for Kate Beckinsale, and you can see that. For bullet time things, you look at something like Wanted, which probably isn't made the way it is if without the Matrix. That movie probably looks entirely different and maybe closer to the Matrix. Is there like, do we think that the Matrix has like a profound effect on movies after it came out?
I'd say yes, but mostly of like the action of like Western movies. I feel like after the Matrix, like it like basically like started to make up for directors think like, oh, we can like also be influenced by like these like kung fu movies and whatnot. I feel like that might be like one of the biggest like effects of the movie, but yeah.
Hmm. I agree with Valerie. The just merging of the Chinese, and having gun kata back in an actual action scene. I
Hmm.
don't think we wouldn't have John Wick the same way without the Matrix. So
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
I mean, I well, Equilibrium came out in '02. That definitely inspired this. Um, I think I don't think John Wick is inspired by the Matrix. I think we don't have it because of like Keanu's status from the Matrix. I don't think there's anything in the Matrix that like directly inspires it. I think like a John Woo movie would inspire John Wick. I think some other, you know, something like I don't know, Taken or something like Equilibrium, which I think we can all say was really inspired by the Matrix.
Hmm.
Um, man, I think if you took that gun kata esque thing from the Matrix, from Equilibrium, and put it in the Matrix, like that's really interesting too. But of course, like after after when Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions came out, like the guns didn't matter anymore. It was all about crazy super powered Neo. Um, but yeah, I think you're right, Valerie. I think it's like the leather pants and the black trench coats and all that. I think that inspiration kind of washed over pretty quickly. But you might be right. I think the Matrix, the use of Eastern style like martial arts unabashedly in the Matrix might have emboldened other filmmakers to say, "Hey, if they can do this, we can do this." Right? This is not a Wachowski thing. There are plenty of like Hong Kong movies, Jet Li movies, where like the fight choreography is insane and way better than the Matrix. It's not a knock on it, but you might be right that that just like, hey, like we can do this now. Audiences are okay for us to have this on screen, and I think that's definitely for the better.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out, I think we don't get nearly as many big budget science fiction movies without The Matrix.
Oh, for sure.
Like I'm just taking a look at like what came beforehand. You have, the science fiction movies are very Arnold Schwarzenegger focused because of Terminator. But then you start as they start degrading, you start getting lower returns. Like 12 Monkeys, which is a great movie, but it didn't do too well. You have Johnny Mnemonic, Judge Dredd.
Blade Runner didn't even do well.
Right. You have Waterworld, Gattaca,
Classic.
Dark City. Like these are movies that did not do a lot of money, and then Matrix comes around, and a few years later we have Minority Report. We have Equilibrium. We have the Resident Evil series. We eventually have iRobot. So I think that we get more science fiction because of the Matrix.
Yeah, I think Minority Report's kind of the big one. I think that's probably a better movie, but that movie probably doesn't get made if The Matrix isn't successful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think Inception is probably the other film that's like, man, Inception's not made if The Matrix, if 10 years prior The Matrix wasn't such a big hit.
I mean, V for Vendetta either.
Yeah, that's a real good
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think about Inception. Yeah, Inception could not be made without the Matrix.
Yeah, because it's like in this one, Morpheus is all about open your mind, and this is the code, and this is the construct, and like, and they're expecting audiences to be along for this like philosophical discussion, along with, hey, we can do kung fu, and we can shoot them up, and we can do these things, and then Inception is like, hey, we can have a heist and crazy philosophical mind melding dream, sometimes nonsense, sometimes brilliance. And we'll get into the nonsense and brilliance of the Matrix a little later. But Valerie, as you touched on earlier, since the Matrix came out in the aughts, which would be the is the aughts the teens, Andy? 2000.
No, the aughts is the OOs.
Oh, it's the O's.
Mhm.
Okay, so in the teens, in the 20 teens, both, I don't know their original. I think it's Andy and Larry Wachowski came out and now
You don't have to
identify
see those names. You don't have to say those names.
right, have come
Yeah.
out and are now identify as, I think it's Lana and Lily.
Yes.
But yes, they're now known as, they used to be known as the Wachowski brothers. They're now known as the Wachowskis. And apparently, I didn't know this. I did research. Like Lana, was like ridiculed and subject to a lot of like online scrutiny, dude, just because of the rumors. And thankfully we live in a more accepting time. I'm gonna say more accepting. I'm not gonna say accepting time. But they have since both identify as women, and the Matrix, to not my knowledge, and this recently has long been seen as like an allegory for a transgender like experience. Like Valerie, do you know, like, and did you touch on this when you were younger or pick up on it or anything?
I feel like I feel like I also, because as I am trans, I feel like I kind of like intuited possibly, but I think like once they came out and as I've rewatched it a few times over the past few years, I feel like I've realized it more, especially with that line that Morpheus says about like how you have a splinter in your mind and you can't even explain what it is. Like I feel like that really like explains it well of like being in the
Yeah.
closet and not even knowing it.
Yeah, because I think they were saying that neither of the Wachowskis might have known themselves at
Hmm.
this point. Which is, it's a thing that I obviously, personally, I don't understand, but you hear of and you read of, and you empathize with those people. There are a couple of quotes in the Matrix that kind of hint at this. One, Morpheus says you've built a prison for your own mind. Feeling trapped in your own mind. He talks about a residual self-image and how Neo kind of presents himself differently in the Matrix. And eventually, after Neo's taken the red pill, and he has to kind of accept his responsibility and role as the one. He tells him like, "Hey, you are in control of your own life. You are in control of the actions. I can show you the door, and you have to walk through it." Um, and then I think it has come out recently that I don't know if you guys know the character Switch, the woman in the white outfit.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to be a man in like physically in the real world, and like a woman when she's plugged into the Matrix. The
Huh.
Wachowskis wanted that, and Warner Brothers said no because they didn't feel like apparently they didn't feel audiences would be able to track that and understand it.
Oh, that tracks with what Morpheus says about your own mind's perception.
Yeah.
Yeah, the self image, right? The residual self image is what you want to look like.
Oh man, I really like that.
And
Yeah.
her name is Switch. Like it was
Mhm.
like you can tell that's what they wanted.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, Speaking of, actually, I actually forgot about this until now, but at the end of last year, I actually like did a thread on Twitter about like how like in like the Speed Racer like Wikipedia page, how like they were still listed on Wikipedia as the Wachowski brothers, and
Oh,
how that shouldn't be, and then like there for like almost all of like New Year's Eve, there was a whole discourse going on, both on my Twitter and both in like the editing like suite of like the Speed Racer Wikipedia of people like debating what to do about it.
I mean, I I can see if it had like been like overlooked because like nobody changed it,
Hmm.
you know. But like after a certain point, like if their page has changed, and it should have, and it is now, it's
Hmm.
changed to the Wachowskis. Like then you should change it. Like
Yeah.
as soon as somebody finds out, there shouldn't be discourse.
Hmm.
Obviously this is we want to be reasonable people. So let's kind of go back to let's kind of talk about some of the things of the Matrix. Uh, Actors who were almost cast as Neo. Obviously, these would be very different films without Keanu Reeves. The first one we know is Will Smith, who turned this down because he said he didn't understand the script, which is fair. Uh, he turned it down for Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West.
Well, yeah, Wild Wild West. Um,
He understood the spider.
yeah, the spider, the giant spider, and Kenneth Branagh. Um, Brad Pitt was originally approached to be Neo as well.
Wait,
He said
what?
he said he had just finished filming 7 years in Tibet and it was too exhausting, so he couldn't pick up another project right away.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
This is a different movie with either of them. I
Oh,
have
oh
another
my!
one. If any thoughts on Brad Pitt?
Like I don't even know what this movie would be like with Brad Pitt. It would be so different.
It would just be Neo eating something in every scene.
Hmm.
Uh, Leonardo DiCaprio was also approached about it.
Huh.
Hmm.
I mean,
There's too much. So, in my opinion, he's coming off of Titanic. He didn't want to do like another big budget, like CGI centric film. Apparently, there's too much. He's too earnest. Leonardo DiCaprio in 1999.
Yeah. It's just so. I can't believe that both of the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood actors were both up for this.
Yeah. Hollywood westerns, Wild Wild West. The last name I could dig up was Sandra Bullock
huh.
was an
Huh.
option before Neo, which I don't know how. This film is so like I can't. I think as the film exists, nobody could have played that role but Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
Now, I won't try to remember what Keanu or who Keanu was in 1999 as well. Like he did have Point Break, but for the most part, this was a comedic actor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no,
or
he
at
did
least his-
Speed.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. I just remember that the first trailer for The Matrix plays on the whoa
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
'cause he does that in
Bill and Ted's.
Bill and
Yeah, the
Ted,
Bill and Ted. Yeah.
Yeah, so man, yeah, okay. I'm looking over this now. You've got a lot of interesting choices with Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right.
Okay, yeah,
Hmm.
Johnny Mnemonic.
yeah. Well, Johnny Mnemonic is more of a it's a weird movie.
Well, yeah, but like so was this in
Yeah.
in a in a nutshell. Or when you're looking at it quickly, for Morpheus, the original name was Sean Connery. So
Uh,
if the studio got their way, it would have been Sean Connery as Morpheus and Will Smith as Neo. Uh, it's strange.
this would be like one of those Sean Connery, sleepwalk performances where he just does it for the paycheck. He would not understand this movie at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know who else. I couldn't see who else was going to be Morpheus. But I love him in this. I think he is just as vital to the success of this film as Keanu. There we go. I found the list here. Samuel L. Jackson was also considered, which would have been fine, but he was also doing the Phantom Menace, I think, at the same time. Gary Oldman. Any thoughts? No.
Eh.
I mean, he would have been okay depending on what Gary Oldman we get.
True.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe. I mean, Gladiator came out a year or two later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did it right. And the last name I have here is Chow Yun Fat, who is the only other actor I think I would have been okay with this role.
I just found a few names myself.
Oh yes, give it to us. What are they?
For Neo, one name was Nicolas Cage.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, this is after Face Off. This would have
Mhm.
that might have been better.
Hmm.
No, this would not have been a better movie with Nicolas Cage.
I really wonder.
I think I don't know. There's something about Keanu. His
Mhm.
his how many other actors that they chose could you believe was like this ghost-faced hacker who stayed up all night, like on his computer?
True.
Not Brad Pitt.
True.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not Brad Pitt.
Mhm.
Anyone else, Valerie?
Johnny Depp.
Oh.
Johnny Depp would have been like, I can see it, but it also would have been like, if Keanu's an A plus in this, like the fit, that's like a C plus. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is Wikipedia, so it might not be true, but someone was up for both Neo and Morpheus. Want to know who that was?
Was it Val Kilmer?
It was Val Kilmer.
Oh my god. Oh. Oh, this is like right during the Saint and oh man. Okay. Oh wow. Oh wow.
At least Val Kilmer fits the bill.
Yeah.
Would you rather have Val Kilmer or Johnny Depp?
Yeah, Val Kilmer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Keanu is a special.
I will tell you, the one actor who I truly think could have been a good Morpheus is my personal favorite, James Spader.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that.
He,
I wonder if he has the physicality for it.
Well, and that's the thing is back during the 1999 he did. After he did during Boston Legal, he just got kind of fat and slowed down. But in 1999, I can see him doing the hotel room scene with the pills very well because he has a certain vocality about him that could have done that. What do we think about Hugo Weaving?
I think if you need someone to tell you something, and you need it to be important, and you need the audience to listen, and you need the actor to enunciate, I think Hugo Weaving's perfect. I think he is. This is why he was V. This is why he was Elrond. He is so commanding. Like in a room where Lawrence Fishburne has been telling you all of this like crazy techno mumbo jumbo, and you're just like, you have to believe in like the old sage man. Like you need somebody in a room who can like overpower Lawrence Fishburne, and I don't think many actors could do that. And I think Hugo Weaving's one of the few who could.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And of course we also have Carrie Ann Moss. I'd hate to say this, but any replacements for her, I just immediately jump to Underworld.
Okay.
Just because it is the same kind of role with Beckinsale.
I really like Carrie Ann Moss's performance in this. The only thing I don't like is at the end when she's like speaking over Neo's body, and she's like, the Oracle told me that I would love the one. Like, girl, you've known him for like 4 days. It's just like it's one of those things. It's a convenience. But other than that, I really liked her. Apparently, she had like a 3-hour like physical test. Because like all the actresses that were up for Trinity had to do this crazy physical test because it's like, hey, you're gonna be in this wire harness. You need to be jumping up and down. You're gonna be doing somersaults and stuff. Like we need you to be able to do that. And like I'm really glad. Like I'm really glad they thought of that before casting somebody. TV Marvel, Netflix shows don't do that now. With what's his name from Iron Fist. So I'm glad that went through the Wachowskis' brain as they were creating this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Carrie Ann Moss is so good in this. Like she does the role so well, and she's really good as like an actress at like portraying like subtlety. Like she's very good at, like showing mood just through like very subtle things. I'd say.
Yeah. I also think Michelle Yeoh could have done this.
Michelle Yeoh can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Make her. What's that line from Modern Family? You can cast her as Batman, and I'd watch it. But he was talking about Meryl Streep. Yeah, Michelle Yeoh. I don't know how old she was at this point.
She did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, the age range is there. She's unbelievable in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That movie's amazing. I was looking at the fight scene after. I just watched the fight scene between Morpheus and Neo, and I was like, man, this has got to be in contention for like best fight scenes ever. And so I just started looking them up, and her fight scene in Crouching Tiger with Zhang Ziyi is at the top, near the top of that list as well. Okay, let's move on to why was this successful, and why
say what you will about action movies, but there is something
successful when the sequels were not. Do we have an answer to that question? I mean, critically successful. Obviously, those films made a ton of money, but I think everyone can agree this is a far superior film to those two.
Wasn't it something like I don't remember where I heard this, but wasn't it that like the first Matrix was like a condensed version of like a trilogy they had planned, and so like the sequels were just like they basically made a second trilogy for that trilogy?
I can see that, yeah.
One thing I'm just going to say this because it's kind of mean, but I feel like they were rewarded for their slight philosophical binge in this one, and and the Wachowskis decided to just dive into that. I mean, really dive into the philosophy, this weird heady talking, and that's how we got The Architect.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were praised too much, or a studio note was like, oh, this, people really liked this part of it, we're just gonna put so much more of this into the next two. And that was probably also part of making and filming these two back to back. I mean, Matrix Reloaded and Returns? Revolutions came out like 6 months apart from each other, didn't they?
Yeah.
It wasn't even a full calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's a big thing right there is that double punch. There was no chance to edit and kind of change this around.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at something like Lord of the Rings. Like, can you imagine New Line Cinema's like, the gall they had? Like they're just like, yeah, we're gonna let you film these all three back to back to back, and like I don't want to say worst case scenario, but like a negative scenario is Reloads and Revolutions, and like the best possible case is Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings 1, 2, and 3. But interesting, the
worst case is The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm. The Hobbit, yeah.
That's way worse than these.
It almost feels like an inverted version of like what happened with the Back to the Futures, where like Bob Gale like wrote the sequel and made it, and then it was so long he made it 2 movies, and this feels almost like an inverted version of that, where it has almost the same like calendar year, like less than a calendar year thing, where both movies were just so quick next to each other, but somehow that one worked and this one did not.
Yeah. So this one feels, Andy, you made a good point where it's like, or I don't remember, I think it was Valerie who said that this might have been this should have been a trilogy on its own, or they wrote it that way, because like there's no time for Trinity to really develop feelings for Neo. Like Neo figures out he's the one, like in the subway, and then in the abandoned building, he like stops the bullets, jumps into Agent Smith and destroys him, which was really cringy and like terribly like digitally made. And then at the end of the movie, he's flying, right? There's no, it's like, oh, I'm Batman 1 second and I'm Superman the next, and there's no growth. When you watch Star Wars, Luke manages to guide missiles into a thing, and in Empire, he can do handstands and make things float. And then in Return of the Jedi, he apparently has all these crazy, awesome Jedi powers. 3 movies, and in this one, it's like, hey, in the last 15 minutes of this one movie, our hero goes from young chosen one to mastered chosen one, and I think they jumped the shark in those last 15 minutes.
It would have been kind of cool to have an entire movie with this. You don't know what's going on, and and like it's just a terrifying thing. Neo's being chased by a police force, or the Smiths, and it's really weird. And then you end it with him breaking out, but also the climax would be like something along the lines of the interrogation.
Oh my god, I would love that. That'd be such a good movie.
That scene is terrifying when his mouth is gone. Like, if they could have played that right, but I don't think it would have been nearly as much of a success if that's how the movie ended, was him getting out of the weird pod.
Yeah.
I think maybe even the movie. Remember when the train hits the agent? I think the movie should have ended there, where it's just like, man, this Neo guy, like he's like, and then he comes back to Zion, right? And then rumors swell in Zion. Hey, we don't quite know for sure if this guy's the one, but he is the only guy to come out of it against an agent. And then the sequel, you could have introduced the Guardian, the Seraph, the Asian guy who like goes toe to toe with fully roided out Neo. Um, Agent Smith is still alive. He's not this weird repeating virus that happens. I think that was maybe a mistake by the Wachowskis and the writing team there to like add that last 2 minutes in.
I do want to recommend a Hugo Weaving movie that I just remembered existed, and I really loved. It's called The Interview. It is just entirely an interrogation scene.
With Hugo, okay,
yeah,
with
with
Hugo
Huh.
Weaving, that's fascinating.
Right.
Interesting.
It's an Australian movie. A guy is arrested by the police and is questioned about a murder. And Hugo Weaving plays the guy who's being questioned, and it is beautiful. I mean, it's great. I really cannot recommend it enough. It's called The Interview, and I think it's a '98 movie. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. It's one of those movies with only like 2 people in the cast.
Right.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. All right. Let's move it along with our talk on the Matrix. What is your favorite part of this movie? Why don't we start with you, Valerie?
I do feel like it's that first like few minute chase scene with Trinity. I was surprised by how much that like held up and just how like great the whole like choreography and everything was about that. I just really love that scene. That was great.
Yeah. Most of the movie holds up, even though
Mhm.
it's like 1999 and action films have not aged well, generally speaking. Andy, how about you?
I really liked the tension in the scene where Morpheus is captured. When they're hiding in the walls, like that sequence, I don't did something for me. It was so tense. It reminded me of The Raid.
Yes.
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the set design.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the 4K remaster, so
Oh, nice.
yeah, the set design was just very beautiful, I thought, and I'm that's probably what I'm gonna end up remembering the most.
I particularly love when like after like they're caught and like Morpheus was like he takes a heavy breath and he goes oh and like bursts through the tie like the from inside the wall and tackles the agent. Like, man, that's a good scene. You're right. My favorite scene is the dojo fight
Mm.
where
Mhm.
you kind of get a sense already that Neo's not just another awoken human, because Morpheus like, how's he doing? And Tank's like, man, he's gone 10 hours straight. And then they log into the construct and everybody runs out to watch. And, Keanu Reeves is famous now for being super committed to doing his own stunt work and being able to know choreography and stuff like that. And, Lawrence Fishburne hasn't been known for that since then, but still, I think the choreography is actually really good. And I think the two actors are really, really committed, and their ability to get these close-up shots, to get these awesome, even wire work martial arts scenes, really holds up.
Yeah. I remember once watching an interview with the Wachowskis where they were saying that they were really influenced growing up by like the John Wayne movies because of like how like he was so good on like the horse, and they wanted to see more movies of like actors like actually like doing like stunt choreography.
Huh.
Yeah, interesting. That's really cool because like in this year, we get the Matrix fights and we get the Duel of the Fates from the Phantom Menace, and like those are just the the Obi-Wan Anakin fight, especially in Return of the what was it? Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like, yeah, like Ewan and Hayden were just like they just practiced the whole time and you can see like their the ability, like you said, the ability to get up close and watch the actor actually do something provides so much value to it cinematically. Um, what are our thoughts as we wrap up on the Wachowskis' work, or Wachowski, I don't know, Wachowskis' works since The Matrix, since this 1999 movie?
I really like a ton of it. Like they have some misses, but I really like I like Speed Racer a lot. Uh, Cloud Atlas, it has very bad parts, but I also enjoy some of it. Jupiter Ascending is fascinating. I wouldn't call it good. And
Yeah,
Sense8 was, I like Sense8.
yeah, I've heard good things about Sense8. It does, from what I've heard, it takes too long to kind of get good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, somebody was like, "Yeah, just watch. Just you got to power through the first 7 episodes." And I was like, "No, like it's too long."
Hmm.
I think the Wachowskis, weirdly, I think they have good ideas, right? They wrote V for Vendetta, they adapted that. I've heard Speed Racer's decent. I know Cloud Atlas has its fans, and I tried watching Jupiter Ascending, and I can't do it. But I also think there's a bit of like a George Lucas problem, and I always talk about this because I think rampant in Hollywood. As soon as somebody has like a massive success, people just hand them blank checks. The
Hmm.
Wachowskis, George Lucas, M. Night Shyamalan comes to mind, and we'll try to get his
Colin
Sixth Sense movie
Trevorrow.
in. I mean, uh, no, what's his name?
Book of Henry.
Gosh. But yes, Trevorrow. Who's the District 9 guy?
Blomkamp.
Blomkamp
Yeah.
is another guy. There's just so many where it's just like,
We'll
but
see pretty soon with the mystery movie of Ryan Johnson's.
I see. I don't like The Last Jedi. I like the works he's done before. Um, but even The Last Jedi, I think suffers from, hey, we have this really brilliant filmmaker. Let's just let him make the movies however he wants.
Yeah.
And that only works for a certain very small sect of filmmakers. It works for, I wouldn't even say Nolan, because Nolan has a lot of like, he tends to have a lot of problems. It works for Edgar Wright. It
Hmm.
works for Paul Thomas Anderson. Um, it worked for, I'm not a fan of Quentin Tarantino because of how problematic he is.
Hmm.
But up until his editor passed away, it worked for him. Um, who's the other one that? Oh, and Wes Anderson. And
Hmm.
those are the only filmmakers off the top of my head who you let them do whatever the heck they want, because most of them are like super stylized and really specific. But if you're not, and you just want to make movies, I still think you need these smart producers in there, and not dumb producers who tell you I need a giant spider in my movie. um, um, but yeah, I kind of hope that the Wachowskis are allowed to either write or produce or direct something and not like be in charge of everything. Uh, they are the directors and writers on The Matrix. They are writers and producers on V for Vendetta. But anytime you look at something with a trifecta, it's Speed Racer, Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending, and it's just like like those are your, you kind of get a sense that they are the ones in charge from beginning to end, and it
Hmm.
lives and dies by their word, and it seems to have problems, to say the least. All right. Is there anything else about the Matrix that we should touch on and talk about before we sign off here today?
Uh, what do you two think of the new Matrix movie that only Lana's like writing, directing, producing? What do you think of that?
Hmm. Uh, I think it has a lot of potential to be good, but need I need to know: are they doing another cycle? Like, is this the beginning of another cycle? Is this an old cycle. Is this? I just don't know anything about it, and I kind of want the one with Michael B. Jordan now instead.
Oh yeah.
I'm not convinced that Michael B. Jordan is a great actor.
Well, you hate people with middle initials, Ariel.
I do. That's why I hide my Ariel D. Rada initial. No, see, if you kind of look at all the movies I've seen him in, which is not a ton, but Chronicle, Fruitvale Station, Fantastic Four, Creed, Black Panther. To me, he's just doing the same thing. And I don't think that makes him a bad actor, but I also don't get why everyone calls him a great actor. Would you call?
You need to watch The Wire.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he's really good in that.
Would you call? Maybe Brad Pitt's a bad example. Would you call Tom Cruise is a bad example too? But like early Tom Cruise, early Brad Pitt, they're like, yeah, you guys are good at what you're doing, but are you doing anything else in it, right? Like Leo, I think does very different things in several of his films. But even what's the other guy? Christoph Waltz. Christoph Waltz does what he does at an A+ level, but does he do anything else? And is he just doing like himself in that sense, right? Am I making sense here?
No, you're making perfect sense.
Yeah, okay, I get that.
But I would like to see some form of range. Maybe I should check out The Wire. It's been a little bit, but yeah, Michael B. Jordan, not convinced. In regards to this new movie, I was talking to Andy about like, I don't think the movie works with today a new Matrix movie. I don't think it would work with today's audiences unless they incorporate things like modern day, the fact that people know what coding is. Or what mods are. So like I am a elementary school tech teacher, so I have a base knowledge of coding. But even if I didn't, because I play video games on my computer, I know what mods are. I know I know how to change the server, and I know how to apply mods, and I know how to block viruses. And like I think an updated Matrix movie has to take into account that your public doesn't think being a hacker means typing really fast anymore. Like we know the public knows to a certain degree what hacking is, or at least your core audience knows what is required of hacking and decoding and of computer virus and mods. Like I was saying, like a modern day AR, like you have to think of the Matrix as like this really complex, incredibly powerful video game, because in a weird way it is. And so nobody wrote an aimbot for the agents. Like, why are they missing shots, right? You should be able to program code a machine to recognize what a human brain is and say, hey, if I'm aiming at this human, I'm gonna hit the brain. But that's an interesting thing that like, if they don't understand what made the first Matrix so cool and revolutionary, talking about constructs and coding and deconstructing and online representing yourself online, then I just don't know. If they don't get that that's what made the successful, then I don't think the fourth Matrix will be successful.
Yeah, I get that.
All right, I go on spiel.
That's all good.
Okay, anything else about the Matrix? Andy, did you have anything?
No, not really.
I just have something to mention. There was a scene where they take the helicopter from the roof, and then they fly it to the level where Morpheus is. Then he just lights up the room and like tries to sweep and shoot the agents, but like he almost shot Morpheus. It was just a funny thing that they didn't seem to think through. Okay, what are your grades on the Matrix? Like a retro review grade?
I'll go. Mine. I'm giving it an A-.
Okay, Valerie.
I'd give it a solid A.
Okay, yeah, I think I'd give it an A. I think it's simplicity. I think the action's real good, except for one or two things that you can forgive for being 1999. All right. This was fun. This was good talking to you, Valerie. Where can, if you so desire, where can our guests check out your work or your stream or anything?
Yeah, you can find me at twitch.tv/stealing Valerie, and you can also, I forgot to mention this earlier, I'm an organizer for a convention that takes place every year in Burbank, California called BugCon. We do our next convention, or we're doing the fundraising for right now. Go to Indiegogo .com/project/bugcon-2020.
All right, well, make sure to put those links in the episode description, Andy. I think you're doing that
Yep.
for this episode, right? Okay, so make sure we put Valerie's stream in there and her Indiegogo link and stuff like that. Andy, where can the listener find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Hebrews Pale Ale.
All right, you can find me at Dread Pirate Roddy. You can find this show at Geek 101 Podcast on Twitter and Facebook and Patreon. Email us geek101pod@gmail.com. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.